What if the ultimate paradox of military genius is not the ability to crush your enemy with overwhelming brute force, but the masterful capacity to transform your own vulnerability into an inescapable, deadly trap? Throughout the bloody history of human warfare, superiority has almost always been defined by raw numbers, resource dominance, and industrial weight. For centuries, generals operated under the rigid, unyielding belief that a larger army would naturally absorb and shatter a smaller force through simple geometric attrition. But in the burning plains of Cannae, a single Carthaginian strategist looked at a catastrophic numerical disadvantage not as a death sentence, but as a complex psychological and spatial equation waiting to be solved. Hannibal Barca did not merely fight the Roman army. He hacked their collective psychology, inverted their aggressive momentum, and forced them to systematically construct their own slaughterhouse. This is the dark anatomy of the Cannae matrix, the definitive historical masterclass in the art of the double envelopment. If you are intellectually prepared to analyze how pure tactical mathematics can utterly dismantle an empire, hit the like button, subscribe, and let us dissect the mind of history's most dangerous strategist. To truly comprehend the sheer scale of this tactical miracle, one must analyze the brutal geopolitical matrix of the Second Punic War into 16 BC. The Roman Republic was not just a regional power. It was a relentless military machine capable of generating endless legions and absorbing catastrophic losses. Hannibal had already crossed the frozen peaks of the Alps, invading the Italian heartland and humiliating Rome in multiple consecutive battles. Terrified and desperate to eliminate this existential Carthaginian threat once and for all, Rome unleashed its ultimate weapon, the largest single army it had ever assembled in its entire history. 8 legions, reinforced by thousands of allied troops, forming a colossal juggernaut of roughly 86,000 heavily armed soldiers. Hannibal stood before this massive human wall with only 50,000 men, a fractured mixture of North African veterans, fierce Iberian tribesmen, and volatile Celtic mercenaries. Mathematically, the Roman matrix possessed an absolute, non-negotiable advantage. The Roman consuls, driven by arrogant pride and blind reliance on their superior weight, planned a straightforward, brutal assault to pierce through the center of Hannibal's line and crush his army by pure mechanical pressure. Hannibal, however, understood a fundamental truth that modern strategic theory still teaches today: an enemy's greatest strength can be weaponized into their absolute undoing. He knew the Romans were highly disciplined, aggressive, and entirely predictable. They would strike the center with maximum velocity. Instead of fighting against this momentum, Hannibal chose to flow with it, designing a fluid, dynamic defensive line that defied traditional military orthodoxy. He placed his least reliable, lightly armored Celtic and Iberian infantry in the absolute center of his formation, while holding his elite, iron-disciplined African veterans on the far left and right flanks. But his most radical geometric innovation was the shape of his initial line. Before the armies collided, Hannibal advanced his weak center forward, curving his army outward toward the Roman masses in an inverted crescent shape. To the Roman commanders, this looked like a tactical blunder, an exposed, fragile bulge waiting to be shattered by their heavy infantry. They ordered their massive center to charge, completely unaware that they were stepping into the opening mechanism of a giant, invisible vice. The psychological trap snapped shut the moment the heavy Roman legions collided with the Carthaginian center. Under the immense, crushing weight of the Roman assault, Hannibal's central line began to do exactly what he had meticulously engineered it to do. It slowly retreated. But it did not break in a panic. It drifted backward step by step, absorbing the violent shock of the attack. As the weak center yielded, the outward curving crescent gradually flattened, and then began to bow inward, forming a deep, concave pocket. The Romans, believing they were on the absolute precipice of a historic victory, cheered and surged deeper into the collapsing center. They pushed forward with such aggressive, frantic momentum that their massive formation became dangerously compressed. The soldiers in the middle of the Roman column were packed so tightly together by their own advancing rear ranks that they could no longer draw their swords or lift their shields. Hannibal had successfully stripped them of their tactical mobility, converting a disciplined army into a suffocating, disorganized mass of human flesh, while the Roman center was blindly celebrating its deep penetration into the pocket. The lethal traps on Hannibal's flanks remained perfectly stationary, waiting for the precise mathematical moment to strike. The elite African veterans, positioned on the left and right edges of the crescent, had not retreated at all. As the center pushed back, these heavy, highly disciplined units suddenly found themselves flanking the elongated, compressed sides of the advancing Roman column. On Hannibal's command, they pivoted inward, striking the dense Roman flanks with absolute merciless precision. Simultaneously, Hannibal's superior Numidian and Iberian cavalry completely annihilated the Roman horsemen on the outer edges of the field. Instead of chasing the fleeing survivors, the Carthaginian cavalry executed a flawless tactical turn, sweeping around the entire battlefield to slam directly into the exposed, unprotected rear of the Roman infantry. The circle was complete. The double envelopment was locked. What happened next inside the Cannae matrix was no longer a battle. It was a highly organized, industrial-scale execution that lasted for hours under a blinding summer sun. Surrounded on all four sides, stripped of their movement, and completely cut off from any hope of retreat or reinforcement, 80,000 Roman soldiers were compressed into a shifting circle of absolute terror. The air was filled with the deafening roar of iron smashing against bone, the suffocating dust of the plains, and the desperate screams of men trapped inside a human meat grinder. Carthaginian soldiers systematically worked their way inward from the perimeter, slaying the tightly packed Romans row by row. The slaughter was so dense and efficient that historians estimate nearly 600 Roman soldiers were killed every single minute until darkness finally halted the carnage. By the time the dust settled, over 70,000 Romans lay dead on the field, including their commander, dozens of senators, and the elite political class of the Republic. Hannibal had achieved the most complete, devastating annihilation of an army in the annals of military history. Losing only a fraction of his own men, the enduring philosophical legacy of Cannae transcends the ancient world and remains deeply embedded within the DNA of modern military academies. From West Point to the tactical doctrines of the 21st century, it stands as the eternal proof that battlefield dominance is an intellectual construct, not a material one. Hannibal proved that space, time, and human psychology are highly malleable variables that can be controlled by a superior intellect, allowing a smaller, weaker force to utterly paralyze and erase a colossus. The Cannae matrix teaches us that the illusion of victory is often the most dangerous deception an adversary can face, and that blind aggression without spatial awareness is merely a fast track to self-destruction. Over 2,000 years later, the ghost of Hannibal Barca still haunts the tactical landscape, reminding every strategist that when you think you are breaking through the center of the world, you might just be marching directly into the jaws of a perfect, inescapable circle. Prove you are human. Are you a real human history and military strategy enthusiast who watched this dark tactical saga till the very end? Or are you just a deadbot scrolling through the internet matrix? Prove your existence right now. Leave a comment below with the word Cannae, hit that like button, and subscribe to help us break the algorithm for the next chapter. Thank you for watching Real Human. Stay free.